Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to a new playthrough of Dwarf Fortress. I am Armads, and, well, we're going to do something different today. So, one thing about this playthrough is I have quite extensively, I should say, edited the raws. Mostly for the dwarves, although in the past I've edited them for the other races, but this time, just for the dwarves. So, one thing that the dwarves that have changed, I should say, that has changed about the dwarves is they're pretty much evil bastards now. I mean, they're already kind of evil bastards, but essentially we've taken all of the ethics of dwarven society and we've changed them all to acceptable. So things such as slavery or wearing or eating people of neutral actors or even your own race is totally acceptable. So doing things like, wearing a dwarf bone crown when you're a dwarf is totally acceptable. Or more accurately, is a personal matter. So everything from theft to murder to lying, all of it is a personal matter now. So the dwarves essentially have privatized the entirety of their, I guess, justice system. So the entire justice system is a personal matter. If somebody murders a friend of yours, you don't go to the mayor. It's now your own job to fix it. Furthermore, we've edited their, I guess you could say, their core ethics of what they believe. So now they are completely and totally driven to things like unity and power and cunning. And they look down on things, like harmony or peace. So the dwarves are now highly warlike, and they also believe in completely in power, as well as with family and other certain things like loyalty. So what you end up having is that the dwarves, on one hand, are super loyal to their families, to their friends, but they're not really loyal to anyone else. And because everything's a personal matter, if you murder somebody who's a friend of theirs, it's up to them to revenge you. So what this has done, at least in terms of if I went through the legends, is it has turned dwarven society essentially into a murder or be murdered society, wherein most of the rulers at one point or another are stabbed in the back by somebody else, and those people who did that are then stabbed by other people who are then stabbed by other people. Dwarven society, therefore, is a matter of grudges and counter grudges, essentially. And it's really all there is to it. Now, I haven't yet played the game itself. I've only done how you might say, done the world generation. And if I remember correctly, this is the year 250. So when we do this, when we play, we're going to see how Dwarven society reacts. Will they start murdering each other? Will we start getting tantrum spirals all the time? I don't know. I simply put, don't know how this is going to react. But I do know that if the legends are to be believed, or I should say legends mode is to be believed, there's going to be a lot of murder. Because I think the most common cause of death is murder. With dwarves just fucking knifing each other in the back constantly. And if it's not dwarves, it's other creatures that join the dwarven societies. Because the ethics of... The ethics of dwarven society apply to anyone who joins that society. So you end up with a lot of, how do I put it? You end up with a lot of, a lot of murders by people like animal men and things like that. Not entirely a bad thing, but again, not a problem. I also changed the temperature, so it goes from extremely hot to extremely cold. But we'll see. I don't know why there's a temperate ocean at the pole of the world. How's it temperate? Has a temperate ocean right next to a freezing cold forest, but whatever. Now, what I'm looking for at the moment is I'm looking for something with both clay and sand. There we are. Now, it is cold there. It's an untamed wild. There's some moderate other vegetation. There's a lot of trees, though. So all of that's not bad. Okay, go. No. Trying to shrink it down. So I don't really want a giant spawn. Just to keep up with, just to keep up uh, with the FPS. I don't really want the FPS to tank because we have a giant spawn it's always trying to account for. Now, this is a freshwater marsh. I'm not sure how much I want to embark in a marsh. On the other hand, sand, clay, very deep soil, both shallow and deep metals, and a fluxstone layer, all of which are pretty good. Let's just really look. Okay, apparently we're automatically at war with goblins, so that's not a bad thing, or not entirely expected. We can change our civilization. I actually don't know which one. It started in this world with 4 civilizations. One of them's dead, obviously. With goblins, not surprising. I think it'd be better to start with the walled mansion, just because they're the closest. Like, they're right there. On the other hand, this one's called the Hammer of Empires, and that's a pretty badass name, so we kind of have to go with that, I think. So I think we're going to embark here. I think this is going to be my embark. It could go horribly wrong. I have no idea. Alright, let's prepare for the journey carefully. Now, none of this is really going to matter because I tend to have my guys do everything. I tend not to care, and they will essentially generate their own skills as we go along. Essentially, that's... Damn it, go down. What was it? Papermaker was the next one? Yeah. So I'm just kind of giving them random skills in the hopes of we have something for everyone to do, but I'm not worried about it. Oh, whoops. But they're gonna learn all the skills anyway, because I'm using auto labor, so it's just gonna tell me the labor. It's just gonna assign people labors as needed, because there's really no reason that they can't learn new skills. In fact, they're probably gonna learn a lot of new skills as we go along. But even if I wanted to, there's no real way for them to learn all of the skills that are needed. I'm not sure why pump operator is above swimmer, but whatever. I don't need crutch walker. What we do need is an appraiser, and where is it? All these other things. Leader, tactician, not teacher. What I was hoping for is to find I suppose we can use Intimidator and Judgment 10. I'm actually not sure what those do. Organizer, Record Keeper. Not sure what most of those do, so I don't know what the student skill does. I don't know if it really matters, but anyway. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove all of this. We will just add new things. Now you might notice now at the bottom there, we start off with 9,650 points. The reason for that is because I set it to embark with 10,000 points. Because I sort of like the idea of having, no. Where's the thing? There it is. I sort of like the idea of having lots and lots of points to deal with and bringing essentially everything. I mean, if you're going to go start a fort, why exactly wouldn't you? But we'll start with naming the fort. Smith Lungs is a pretty awesome name. But we're just going to kind of we're just going to random until we get to something even better. Scourchingwound. That's going to be the name of our fortress. Welcome to Scourchingwound. There we go. The infamous bodices. Armors of Amazement. Romantic Treaties. The Great Bolt sounds like a pretty awesome name for a group. We should probably get a symbol for our group, though. Creature. Let's filter... Dwarf. How many? Let's go with infinite number of dwarves. Image of random plural. Action or relationship. Now, we could do something really weird, like having them all melting or something. Let's just have the dwarves striking menacing poses. We do need to change the name of it, though. The Gilded God. Never mind. No need to change the name. Alright, but we should probably add some new stuff. So, what do we need to start? Well, we probably need some meat. Wait, no. Okay. There we go. Let's get cat meat. Mostly because it's cheap and we can bring lots of it, so... I usually use cats for everything because there's always... So one of the big problems when you're trying to set up an embark profile. So you notice now at the bottom it says save. Down here it says save. You can save profiles. The only problem with that is that if you bring stuff that isn't localized to wherever, you'll end up with problems and they won't be able to bring the stuff. So I like to use things that I know will always be there. So, oh wow, there's a lot of garden vegetables. I would love to bring lots of garden vegetables, if only because I like to do growing stuff above ground, but I'm not worried about that. Right now, what we need to worry about is basically food. Food's the big one. But anyway, what I was talking about is if you embark, say, like we're embarking in a marsh. If we were, and we have access to lots of kinds of meat, lots of kinds of plants, that kind of thing. If we embarked in like a desert or like the Arctic, we wouldn't have access to those things. But there are certain things that you will always have access to. So, for example, we will always have access to cat meat. We will always have access to seeds. And obviously the biggest problem you usually get is with clothing, because different civilizations have different kinds of clothing they use. Now, I don't like using sweet pods. I usually don't bring those, because all they do is make dwarven sugar. And your dwarves will not... Your dwarves essentially won't brew or cook using... So basically what happens is if you want to use sweet pods, what they do is you grow a sweet pod, and then your dwarves need to grind it up into dwarven sugar. The problem is that your dwarves won't use it unless there's really nothing else to use. So that's kind of a problem because it essentially just takes up lots of space. And later on, when you have, an overabundance of food, as I usually do, you're never going to be in a situation where, it's almost never. I mean, I guess you could sell it. I suppose you could sell it, but otherwise it just takes up space. And one of the big problems with this game is when you start, if you're like me, and you're going to see pretty soon, when I finish this and start playing, is you tend to run out of space fairly early on. And that's kind of a problem because, well, the number of items can drag down your FPS and kind of kill your game. So I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see what goes on. But I'm going to up actually this to 300. Normally I only bring 200 seeds each, but I think this time I'm going to bring 3. We need to get drinks. So in this game, alcohol is more important than food. And the reason for that is your dwarves need booze. Dwarves need lots of booze. And if you don't bring enough booze, your dwarves will get very unhappy. They'll try to drink water, but dwarves that aren't drunk are going to be very miserable, so you don't want to do that. We also need to bring picks. We're going to smelt more picks early on, so I usually bring the cheapest ones possible. That's probably way too many picks to start off with, but it's not too big of a deal. Now, they changed this, so it used to be that... No, I don't want to bring nuggets. Okay, so it used to be that you could bring wooden battle axes, and the wooden battle axes would allow you to cut down trees. They changed that, so actually instead of doing copper, let's just do... Yeah, copper battle axes are still the cheapest, so we're actually going to bring copper battle axes. We're not going to use those to fight, we just need those to cut down trees. It sounds kind of dumb, but that's all we need. And I guess they also work for defense, but we're not worried about that. So we have 2 kinds of anvils: iron anvils and steel anvils. Iron anvils can't smelt anything that's above, like, iron anvils can't smelt or work with steel or anything harder than iron. Steel anvils can do everything. So I usually bring 3 steel anvils, unless we have more later, because that's pretty much going to start you off forever. You're really not going to need anything beyond that. So again, cat leather is pretty cheap. We're just going to bring a little bit, mostly just to stave off any weird moods that our guys get. Now, I usually don't bring plant cloth because we're going to be growing plant cloth. So there's really no reason to do that. Like, I don't see a reason in doing that if we're going to just be, we're going to be growing our own cloth. Silk might be important to grab, I guess. Though we're going to have less of it as time goes by, so it's not really important. Now, we do want to bring wood. It's a lot of wood. A lot of different kinds of wood. But we're going to bring tower cap logs, and the reason is because those always, you're always going to have those. We really don't need to bring a lot of wood because there's wood on the map, but we're still going to grab it anyway, just in case we get stuck with something fucking awful. Some people bring stone and metal bars and the like. I usually don't. We'll see why when we get there. When I do bring the stone blocks, actually I don't really need to bring stone blocks, but I usually do anyway. So I guess we'll bring a couple stone blocks. Really don't need them. There's only one really... Early on, there's only one thing we really need stone blocks for. And that's one of the workshops. So we're not going to worry about that. We should probably bring clothing, though. And this is where the cat stuff comes in. You'll notice that all of the cat stuff is relatively cheaper. And it's almost always there. Sometimes the shirts will be called tunics, and those are something different. I try to bring the cheapest stuff possible. So I guess we'll bring caps. And this isn't so much that we, like... Let's bring... I don't know why gloves are cheaper than mittens, but anyway. Anyway, the reason we're bringing clothing is so that when our current clothing, like, rots off our body, as it tends to do, we will still have, clothing, and our dwarves won't be naked, and naked dwarves are unhappy dwarves. Now, I don't know what the difference between leggings and trousers are, at least in terms of this game. I think that's all of it. We should probably bring backpacks. Again, normally I wouldn't bring backpacks, but we're going to do it anyway. Mostly because I don't want to do this later, so... I guess we'll bring flasks, too. Now, we're not going to need those until we get a military, but... Still. Let's see... I'm trying to think, is there anything we really need to bring? I don't know why on earth we would ever bring one, but like blood. Like, you can't do anything with it, so I'm not sure why we would bring it. We can always make stuff. We don't really need toys or instruments or anything here, I don't think. We can make all of this stuff when we get there. Don't need cages. We do need barrels. We need barrels. I usually bring a lot of barrels, mostly put all the booze in. It's kind of important to bring lots and lots of barrels early on. But we also do need a few more buckets. We don't need nearly as many. But I usually bring like 20 or 30 buckets, which is probably too many. Area quivers, bags. We definitely need bags. Hello, cat leather bags. You're nice and cheap. So we're going to still like bring tons and tons of bags. We probably don't need to, but we're going to. Now, we should probably bring thread. And the reason you want to bring thread is for your surgeons. Your surgeons, so they can stitch people up. Luckily, it's cheap, but usually we're not going to bring sheets, mostly because there's no reason to bring sheets this early. Because we're kind of small. We're going to bring 10 ropes, and the reason for that is so we can get wells. Splints. So I usually only bring 5 splints and crutches. Some people export them. I don't really do that usually. But it's good to have them, so I don't forget, and our guys all die. So this is one of those places of debate. Coke and charcoal are the same thing. You can bring lye. It does need buckets. You can bring potash and pearl ash, Pearl ash is used, I believe, to make clear glass. Potash is used to fertilize. I usually don't bring any of that, though. Usually what I'm going to bring is charcoal or coke. And the reason for that is fairly simple. Without these things, at least early on, you can't, like, burn things or forge things. And obviously, if you can't forge things, you can't make, more picks and more armor and other things like that. So we're going to bring coke. I think that's everything we need. I think that's everything we need. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to bring, considering the old thing I used to forget all the time was I used to wander around and forget to bring anvils, and that was always a problem, but we brought those this time. I suppose we can bring garden vegetables, but there's no real need for that. I'm more worried about bringing animals, mostly for breeding. So like we bring a couple dogs, and let's bring a couple more dogs. And these will breed and give us puppies, which will then grow to be more dogs. We also want to bring cats, which will explode in population, but when food stores get low, and we can also use them for other things, food stores get low, we'll sort of need them, I guess. Now, I used to bring cows a lot, but what I found was that cows were not exactly as useful overall. What I think I want to bring instead, it's sort of like chickens, where I used to bring chickens a whole lot because they're really cheap. The problem with bringing chickens, though, is that, how do I put this? So they make eggs everywhere, and then they constantly clutter up your notifications with things, and eggs also cause clutter, which I might touch on at some point. So what I actually want to do is, just to make sure, I want to check this, because I want to make sure that I get the right kinds of cloth. Llama and alpaca wool, and where is it? Sheep. So llama and alpacas. Which are these? I guess we could bring alpacas. There's really no reason not to bring alpacas, but we kind of want them to breed. So if we bring 4 alpacas, there'll be plenty to breed. Sometimes I bring cows, but if I really need cows, cows are really expensive. So, but they do produce a lot of milk, which you can make cheese, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So I guess we'll bring rams too. A couple ewes, a couple rams. Maybe bring some more dogs. Oh no, can't afford to do 2, and I like to bring them in pairs, so instead, I guess we'll bring a couple more cats. Now we have 8 points left. 8 points. Well, we could bring 1 more pair of shoes. Bring more booze. You know what? We're going to bring more booze. More booze and more food. Okay, so let's save it. Profile 1. This is just kind of I guess you could say it's a temporary profile. If you're really interested, you could do it this way. This is an example. Most of the time, if you embark, you are going to bring this much stuff, but I always tend to do so. But anyway, I think we're ready to go. It only took 20 minutes, so let's embark. You have arrived after a journey of the mountain homes in the forbidding wilderness beyond. Your harsh trek is finally ended. Your party of 7 is to make an outpost for the glory of all of Nilthalal. There's almost no supplies left, other than the year's worth of supplies we brought. But with stout labor comes sustenance. Whether by bolt, plow, or hook, provide for your dwarves. You are expecting a supply caravan just before winter entombs you. But it is spring now. Enough time to delve secure lodgings before the dingoes get hungry. A new chapter of dwarven history begins here. Okay, so that's the starter up, I guess. Next time we're actually going to start digging and putting things out and planning. See y'all later.